Kyle Van Fleet. Kyle Van Fleet is asking, is there a way to intervene between the spreading of radical propaganda from terrorist groups and those susceptible to being turned into lone wolves? Again, I think a really smart question. I worked for several weeks last year on a profile of a young woman from Washington State, an all-American girl who, was born here, came actually from a Christian family, no immigrant roots of any kind, and was in fact a Sunday school teacher at her local church. So just to show you how far over into this other category she was. And she accidentally learned about ISIS after hearing about them on the news. She started to Google them and look for them on Twitter. She ended up starting to talk to them via Twitter direct message, and then via Skype and via Facebook and other apps. And in a period of 3 months, she went from being a Sunday school teacher to having converted to their version of extreme Islam, and was in the stages of discussing a possible trip to a Muslim land, which she understood to be Syria. So the radicalization, my point is, it happens very, very quickly. This young woman was really remarkable in that she was kind enough and open enough to really open up her life to me, and she allowed me to read back through her Twitter messages and try to find, the moment when she veered off course. The one thing that kept her back, it was actually two things, I would say. One was her love of family, and families play a very important role in this, because, of course, she is Googling these things, and so even though they're telling her you're going to come to the Islamic State and you're going to live in a protected place and you're going to join this kind of a utopia, she was able to, of course, realize that there is, a counter narrative to that, and that she might get killed. So part of it was family. The other thing that helped her was the intervention of several people, including a man called Mubin Sheikh, who is a former extremist himself. He's a Canadian man who is a Muslim, and who at one point in his youth had veered into extremism and went so far as to travel to Asia to meet with the Taliban. Somehow this young man pulled himself away from the edge and returned to a normal life, and has now sort of made it his mission, to reach out to troubled young people, many of whom he interacts with on the internet. And I was able to see the interaction that he had with her, and that interaction was really seminal. And what Mubin was able to do, which is something that no law enforcement official in America and really no person who's outside of this framework could do, is he said to her, I've been there, okay? These arguments that you're saying about killing the infidel, I've imbibed them myself. I used to be there. Let me show you this verse from the Quran, which essentially contradicts what you're saying. Let me show you that verse from the Quran. And he deconstructs it by throwing the religion back in their face. And I've always been curious as to why it is that our country hasn't yet done what other countries have done, which is to adopt these people, to adopt these former extremists, and use them in their counter-messaging strategy. I think it's not very useful to have a moderate Muslim imam preaching to these young people, because ISIS tells them these imams are also the kafir, they're also the infidels. It's much harder for them to argue against somebody like Mubin Sheikh, who went so far as to meet the Taliban. So that is one strategy that I've pondered and that I've seen adopted in other places, and that might be interesting to adopt here as well.